Good morning again, everyone. It's really good to be back here at the school today. Last month in October, Robin Dana Casper and Wendy and David Dimmick and I went to the Vineyard National Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had a really wonderful time. It was really encouraging. It made me feel really good about being part of the Vineyard. Just there are so much of what we got to see there really reflected just the values that we have here at Coast. I think a lot of values for diversity, for justice and compassion, for relationship, for humility, for prayer. So I'm going to take a pause this week in our series going through John to show and discuss a video from the conference. But first, I wanted to give a quick update on a couple of leadership things that we talked about at the national conference. There's a few significant leadership changes on a national level. So the first one is that Jay Pathick, who is actually a good friend of mine, he has been for many years the pastor of the Mile High Vineyard in Colorado, is going to be taking over in the new year as the new national director for Vineyard USA. And he was selected through a process that included input from all of the pastors in the movement, which I think is really wonderful. We all got to kind of contribute our say in who we thought should be our next national director. And I think he's going to do a really great job. And then we talked about another number of other leadership transitions and new positions that have been created. They've tried to keep Vineyard National really small so that they don't have to ask individual churches to give a lot of money to support a whole bunch of bureaucracy. But as we've grown, there's been a sense that there is need for a little bit more there. And so one thing that came out was that the national director's job is just way too big. And so they created several associate national director positions. And so I wanted to share a little bit about that with you guys. Caleb Maskell, who some of you guys may have met, he's a close personal friend of mine, is going to be the new associate national director in charge of theology and education. And then Christina Lowry, who I don't know personally, is going to be the new associate national director in charge of church health and development. And then Josh Williams, who you might remember, he spoke to us last year while we were meeting in the park. He spoke to us over Zoom, also a friend of mine. He's going to be the new Associate National Director in charge of evangelism and justice. And I love that we as a whole movement are bringing those themes together, that there's a message here that evangelism and justice belong together, that we're going to talk about more in just a little bit when we get to our video. So going on to what we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to share those things with you. There's a whole bunch of other leaders, but you don't know most of them. That's about all we'll share here. So we're going to turn to this video. Rich Nathan is the recently retired pastor of the Columbus Vineyard, which is a megachurch in Columbus, Ohio. And he's been a frequent conference speaker at Vineyard gatherings for many, many years. And he spoke to us on the last night of the conference on the importance of sharing the gospel, but not just on the importance of sharing the gospel, but also addressing the question, what is the gospel? And what does it mean for us to share it faithfully? And he talked to us about how the kingdom of God is coming and bringing about the restoration of all things. And that means personal restoration to God for each one of us individually, but also it means transformed social behaviors. And he called us to an understanding of the gospel and what it means to live into it and to share its message, in which becoming personally reconciled to God cannot be separated from being converted to God's heart for others around us. And I just thought, Rich's message to us at the conference affirmed so much of what we've really wanted to be about here at Coast. It caused me to feel really good about being part of the Vineyard USA team, and also just wanted to take a Sunday to share a little segment of that with you guys. So we're going to do that in just a second. Rich is going to start out by talking about a theme that we discussed last week. the infiltration of the church by a mindset of capitalism, in such a way that church growth gets prioritized over things like the character of our leaders, or even the integrity of the gospel message that we're preaching. He points out this temptation that pastors face to just say whatever it is that people want to hear in order to avoid offending anybody, so that the church will keep growing, and that this is a barrier to preaching the whole gospel along with all of its social implications. So we're going to watch a 15-minute clip, and then we're going to discuss what we've seen. 2 quick notes as we go into it is that Rich is speaking mostly to pastors. Remember, he's speaking at a national conference, and so about half of his audience is local church pastors. So he's going to repeatedly reference pastors, and I hope that won't be too distracting or confusing, because I think the message is really for all of us. And then the other note is you're going to notice a woman sitting in the background, and just so you're not distracted wondering who she is and what she's doing there, her name is Julia Pickerel, and she's actually the current pastor at the Columbus Vineyard. And she spoke at the conference before and after Rich, so she's sitting there throughout his talk, and we're not going to watch her segment, but just so that you're not wondering what she's doing there while you're watching it. So without further ado, I'm going to pray and we'll watch the video. Yeah. Just wanted to share really briefly something that stood out to me. I found this image of the donut-shaped gospel really compelling. And I just thought this is so relevant for the church today. And then I feel like I see both sides of this all the time, and I think that we all do. Both this really erroneous and dangerous claim that the gospel is about individuals going to heaven, and that's it. And that somehow or other it's actually even possible to get right with God without being a part of the social transformation that Jesus lived and taught. And it feels so good to me. I think this is why I wanted to share it with you. It feels so good to me to know that we're a part of a group of churches that actually speaks to its leaders and pastors on a national level, on its official platform, saying we are going to talk about combating systemic racism, because that is preaching the gospel. We are going to actively advocate for the poor, and we are going to actively advocate for the immigrant in church on Sunday mornings, because the Bible tells us that is the way to know God. At the same time, I think Rich is so right that there is this tendency in the church today to focus on social transformation as a safe, non-threatening application of Jesus' teaching, while just leaving our desperate need for forgiveness, for personal reconciliation with God through the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, just entirely out of the whole project. As if we could just do Christianity without Jesus. I think there's this tendency in the church today to kind of check out the Bible and see if it lines up with our social agenda. Here's the social agenda that I've picked up from politics and my relationships and my friends, and I'm going to see whether or not I'm going to evaluate the Bible based on whether or not it agrees with what I already think. But that's so backwards, right? We've missed the entire ball game if we don't see how incredibly lost we've become. If we have somehow or other imagined that we're going to do good on our own according to our own standards, if we continue to believe that somehow or other we don't need God or we know better than God, the starting place, the beginning place is always going to be reconciliation to the Father through receiving forgiveness and life as an undeserved gift, made available through the death and resurrection of Jesus, through which the Spirit enables us to become what we are not in ourselves. And then from that place, as God's children, we live into the destiny of our family, right? So we're going to just go straight back into our small groups. I want to take just 5 more minutes. At Coast, do you think that we tend to lean toward emphasizing the outside of the donut? Or do you think that we tend to lean toward emphasizing the inside of the donut? And if so, in what ways? A note is if you're new or visiting us, you won't have the foggiest idea which one we lean toward. So just maybe answer for yourself. Do I, tend to lean in one direction or another? Or just share what this conversation is making you think about. Feel free to make this conversation your own. And then how can we make sure to protect the integrity of the gospel message that we're sharing? So we're going to take 5 more minutes in our small groups, and then we'll come back together. There's so many things that we could talk about here, and I hope that when we leave on Sundays, these things just continue to percolate in our minds and continue to just be a part of our conversations. I want to end us where Rich ended us at the conference, which is just a reminder to be sharing the gospel at all. Rich told us a story at the conference about how he had a guy that came to his church, and the guy was an atheist, and he said, he eventually just told him, well, you know what, just here's an idea. If the next time you find yourself in a crisis situation, just pray as if God is real and see what happens. So he said the guy was like, okay, I could do that. And then a few weeks later, one Sunday, the guy comes up to him and says, we got to talk. We got to talk right now. You're not going to believe what happened. No, I was driving in my car, and I was speeding, and I got pulled over for speeding. And he's like, the cop was just, enraged. Apparently, the guy, physically, grabbed him, yanked him out of his car, and threw him against the hood of his car, and was kind of just chewing him out. And the guy was thinking, oh my goodness, this is my 3rd speeding ticket this year. I'm going to be in so much trouble. Police officer goes back to the car to run the license and registration and all of that. And he said, you're not going to believe what happened next. The police, I was standing there against my car, and I just thought, God, I don't believe that you're real. But Rich does. And so, if you're real, could you do something to help me out here? Police officer comes back, smiling. You know what? For some unknown reason, I am just in a really good mood today. And so I'm going to let you off with just a warning. Have a nice day. Leaves. The guy said that he was just blown away. He was like, what am I in touch with? I am in touch with a force in the universe that I did not know existed, right? And prays with Rich that morning to receive Jesus. And it's just a reminder, I think, to all of us that any of us could do that. Any of us could just say to a friend or an acquaintance who, is skeptical, hey, well, if you're ever in a really tough spot, just pray as if God is real and see what happens. Any one of us could have been a part of that exchange if we just cared enough about our friends, to make a suggestion like that. As God's children, we've been given a mission to share the good news about Jesus so that other people can also receive just the extravagant forgiveness and grace and love that we've received as God's kids. It's not okay for us to keep this news to ourselves. So let's make sure that we're doing what Rich is doing. And there's these moments sometimes when just the gospel comes to mind. You're in conversation with someone, the gospel comes to mind. And so often we have this thought by ourselves, we don't say anything. Let's be people who love our friends enough that we would just bring up the gospel naturally when it comes up in simple ways like this. I got my hair cut on Wednesday, and I was talking to the woman who cut my hair. She said, well, what do you do? So I pastor this church. And she's like, oh, wow, I've been wanting to go to church. But I've been invited to the Rock, and I don't want to go to a mega church, and I want to go to a small church. It's like, hey, guess what? We got a small church, And she's like, I'm worried, how progressive is your church? Because I want to go to a church where we can talk about things. And I was like, really? Because we got a church we talk about every Sunday. We talk. You should come because we're small. And we get into groups and we talk about things. And we don't all agree about stuff. We actually really disagree on a lot of things. But we sit around and we talk about them. And so, you could come in with whatever you think, and we could talk about those things. So I remembered that I have my handy little cards, but then I realized I still had the Heritage Park cards in my wallet instead of the new ones. So if you still have Heritage Park cards, or you don't have cards in your wallet, get some on your way out. Because I was like, I got this handy little card that it will tell you. So I had to text her later. She gave me her phone number, and she's not here today, but maybe she'll come another day. And if we keep asking, she said she has to plan ahead to get work off on Sundays. But let's be sharing just the invitation to church, and let's be praying for people. I heard a great. Can I tell? Do you mind? Greg over here. Greg, yes, not Gary. Greg. Greg was just telling me that they prayed at home group for his leg. He's realized that over the years that one of his legs is shorter than the other. He said it didn't bother him before, but over time it's starting to really has become painful. Got prayer for it, and was just immediately and visibly healed, and is feeling all kinds of better right now. Right? That is so awesome. He said, "Go ahead, say it louder." You watched it grow. The whole home group. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so just a reminder, we heard another testimony last week. Let's be praying for each other, and more importantly, let's be praying for our friends that don't know the Lord. And let's be inviting them to be part of what we're doing. We're going to close with the last song like we do each week. And then we always have an opportunity for people to receive prayer on Sundays. So I'm going to ask people who are part of the prayer team if you're on the prayer team, if you could stand up, and if you could move to a space like outside the circle where people can see you. And the rest of us, let's stand. We're going to sing a last song together. And then if you would like to receive prayer this morning, prayer team, can you guys raise your hands and wave for a second so everybody can see? You see everybody over there? If you would like to receive prayer, you can just head over there and ask someone to pray for you. And then we're going to sing a last song, and then our kids are going to be returned to us at 11:30. So we're going to sing, and we're going to hang out and pray, and we'll see our kids again at 11:30.